Hola, y'all already know what it is. Your boy Yaakov, what it do? The outlet to reality, the holders podcast in Vegas and Chicago. What up? This is the place where you want to hide from your drama, or maybe hide from your baby mama. Just kidding. Y si tú quieres cambiar tu vida, if you want to change your life, then subscribe. Ching. And by the way, guys, I just published a book called Shabbat in Chicago. It's about an audacious single mom who opens her heart and home to five adopted kids while embracing her Latino culture while being Jewish. And today we have a very, very special guest. I had to bring him on the show. Give it up for the one and only Zachary. Woo!
Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Oh man, the honor's mine. The honor's mine. So look, for my fans that don't know you, I do want to share a little bit. So basically, I met Zachary at one of these film event, and he was sitting in the front row. I'm not lying. I was there with overalls, and and I was staying quiet while Angel, the director, Yuvia, they were answering some questions. I just stayed quiet, and then this lady all the way in the back. She's like, I have a question for the man right there that's not talking. And she's like, why are you not talking? And I shared a little story on how I got to be a part of this project, changing film by being able to be myself, being Hispanic, but not only that, being Jewish. And I was able to wear my kippah to represent my Judaism, my faith, and it was so cool. The crowd was cheering, they were laughing because I'm a storyteller. And I got to talk to Zachary, and he was so cool, so chill. And we were talking for hours. I think I talked to you the most, maybe 2 or 3 hours. And then we ate tacos, and then we kept going, and that's how we clicked. But my friend, if you could share your input and your first impression when we met, and anything that came up in your head that night.
Absolutely. Well, first, Yaakov, I have to, thank you for having me a part of this platform. It's an honor. I like all week I was talking. Well, it's like for the past few weeks I've been talking to, mi madre about it. I've been talking to my girlfriend about it, Riley. And then you ended up inviting me to be on the podcast because I was updating them as I was reading your book and listening to your podcast in real time since we met at the film event. So now it's just super surreal to be here and to be talking with you. So again, thank you so much. Um, so when we met at that film event, I previously, thanks to, Ali, the grand finale, thanks to, Angel hosting the film event at Millennium Fandom Bar, I actually had learned about you. I was listening to both of their podcasts at the time, sort of you, Ali, Yuvia, like the whole crew. I was learning about you all through Instagram, through all the podcasts at the same time. So shout out to everybody else's podcast. And I just thought your story was amazing because, you know, besides the book, besides the article, besides everything you do, you had talked about, you know, how important it was for you to identify as being Jewish and being Guatemalan. And also I learned through your book, also Mexican.
Yes.
So uh I clicked with you so much just because your spirit was amazing. I could tell you had lived a life. You're probably, probably mentoring. Now I know like your whole story. But when you talked about how passionate you were about your identity, I so clicked with that because for me, for people who don't know, I am Puerto Rican and I'm Jewish. And the Puerto Rican side of my family, that's what I really connected to growing up. That heritage is really strong for me. I didn't learn Spanish immediately, but I learned through school. Like like for me, Spanish, being being Puerto Rican, being Hispanic, I'm just so proud of it. And as I got older, it just really became something that I outwardly want to express to people. and I want to take pride in public or at home in private. So hearing your story, then getting to meet you, I was so hyped because I just felt like, we had this connection that it's one of those things. It's like I had never spoken to you, but I knew, and now it's happening. Like, we would just be friends and continue a relationship. So when we met at that night, I ended up I was really shy because I was like, oh, there he is. I didn't think I'd get to meet him this quick because I listened to all your podcast stuff maybe 2 or 3 days before. Thank you to Merc Anthony. He was kind of out talking to people. I kind of bumped into him, and we started chatting. And then I was like, Merc, I saw you talking to Yaakov. Do you think you could introduce me? And he was like, hey, Yaakov loves to talk to anybody, and you just gotta send me over your way. And that was it. It was perfect. I talked to you. I learned about your book. You had the book on you, and today I'm so proud I got to read it. It's just like, just from the moment you gave it to me, I was like, okay, I knew I was gonna have a connection with you, but I knew this book was gonna be incredible. Just because, like, look at these colors, look at the design. It's like rose gold publishing. Like, you gotta give credit where credit's due. It's beautiful. It's like it's like a historical, artifact. It's like from the moment I held it, I'm like, this is precious, this is great. And like you said, we talked instantly, super long time. We ended up getting tacos. But I think the last thing I want to mention is you ended up signing it for me. And that was so sweet. I would love to later share what you wrote inside, but yeah, it meant so much. You are such a personable person, and I'm so glad I got to meet you that night. It felt like the perfect night. I got to pick your brain at a few things, and it really was just such a positive experience. I'm still talking to Riley about it today, about how fun it was, and I met so many people that night. It was such a great event.
Wow, thank you. You gotta, and I can be honest to say this. You were the only person out of the whole entire event that actually got my book. And it's crazy because your boy was struggling. But it was just so nice to have somebody Latino and Jewish to support me. Like that was beautiful. Not only that, like you sound like a very authentic person, very smart, open-minded. What stood out to me the most is that, I have a lot of friends that are Puerto Ricans. I learned a lot about history, and you share the story was so compelling, so like, and I'm very for woman empowerment. But the story you shared about Puerto Rico, if you could share like your first time going there and learning about this mayor that changed the world. Like I want you to, if you could spill the beans, maybe not the cheese, I'll appreciate it.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
Please,
Yeah.
please.
Um, so Dona Fela, she was the first female mayor in Puerto Rico. Um, I think she was active in office, definitely finished her term around the 60s, 70s, I think started around the 30s, 40s. She was in service for a very long time because the people wanted her to stay in office. I mean, what to say about her? So I can say I learned about Dona Fela through my experience of traveling to Puerto Rico for the first time. I got to travel there, I think like 2016, 2017, somewhere around that time. And I was just hyped. I like again been learning, teaching myself Spanish for so many years. It was the first time I was going to meet my family on La Isla, in Arecibo, and I was going to get to speak to them in their native language. Like for me, it was definitely like such a dream come true. Something I was just desperately wishing for. Since really getting to embrace that part of me growing up. And we get to the isla. It's beautiful. I meet my family. I get to go to San Juan for the first time, the capital. It's like a fairy tale. One day, the tour guide was like, "You need to check out this woman, Dona Fela. You, your mom, your sister, you all need to go." So yeah, shout out to mi madre Carmen, shout out to my sister Marie. We got to go to basically this museum, but it's her house. So this woman was so incredible. They opened up her home and turned it into a foundation that gives back to the community in Puerto Rico, gives back to places around the world, and you get to literally step into her home and kind of go back in time and kind of step into her life. You learn about all of these amazing things she did, and like, just to reiterate how incredible this woman is. When you step into her home, when you look around the walls, do you see like 96 honorary degrees, accolades, awards from around the world, because her time in office was just so selfless, so giving to her community. People around the world wanted to recognize the work she was doing in Puerto Rico. Some of that work included taking Puerto Rico from a state of poverty and turning it into um, like a sufficient home for so many of the locals on the island. I can speak, from memory, because I was so fascinated by her story. I ended up learning more about the museum online when I got back home. In high school, I ended up making a short documentary about her for my class, as we were learning about world leaders, like real kind of, landmark people in our history. And, doing my research, it was just amazing. Like, Puerto Rico at that time was, this kind of new hip, right? Like, the territories come up. Americans are now coming over to Puerto Rico. They got some beautiful hotels. But the people, right? They got these beautiful hotels. The people aren't staying in these hotels. Some of them are living in real poverty. Some of them are living in homes that are not fully developed. So, some of the things Dona Fela did was turn these, kind of poverty in some of these areas, flourish the community with education, with new jobs. She created new factories, that were giving new opportunities for this community in Puerto Rico, right? And one of the most famous things she ever did was she wanted children on the island to experience snow, right? We're going back in time. There are people who still to this day have never left Puerto Rico, people who will never leave for so many reasons. Puerto Rico doesn't, as far as I'm aware, has never gotten snow. So Dona Fela made some special calls, and you can find this footage online. Go to YouTube right now. She flew in snow onto La Isla, and it was like raining snow for a whole day. You see kids putting together enough snow to build snow people to go sledding, and her reasoning behind this was that kids should just experience snow. The people need to experience new things, to look at life from a new perspective. And to me, it's just one of the most fascinating things about her, and also one of the most fascinating for me, like, acts of service in politics, right? When we think of politics, it can get so muddy, it can get so technical. But the fact that she started as a civil servant, a social worker, and eventually becoming a politician, the fact that she took time in office to do something so selfless for the city, right? For the island, it's just incredible. And I really encourage anybody to learn more about Dona Fela. One of my goals in the future is to tell her story more, maybe in like a documentary sense, maybe like a professional feature film. She's one of those people that you can look and learn about her in history. She's there, she's prominent, but definitely forgotten. And I would love to, in this lifetime, bring her name back to the public eye, and really, get people learning about her and carrying on more of her work. And I guess the last thing to say is, for anybody who's interested, her museum is active. They're still working in San Juan. If you go to Puerto Rico, go check them out. And if you aren't planning to go to Puerto Rico, think about donating to the museum. You know, if her story speaks to you, you can give back to her, the community that they support in Puerto Rico. Yes, Dona Fela, uh, just, I remember I learned about her in school, changed my life, still continues to really shape me, and who I want to be today. Yeah, incredible woman.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's beautiful, man. I'm so I love the detail. I should have brought the popcorn and the nachos because man, you were on it. And I gotta be real,
Anytime.
right? I gotta be real that she is like amazing, person. I learned so much from you sharing her story. I think you should follow your dream and create this documentary or feature film because they always say this, do it before someone else does it, right? So
Oh,
you
so true.
you gotta do it, brother. I'm telling you, as a brother, a friend, you gotta do it. And I can see it because you have so much love and passion for it. This is where the moment you don't want to lose that fire, that momentum. So I'm telling you, let the dream happen. It's not too late. Make it happen. And I'm here to support you to ask you something, right? We're talking about women with a lot of women empowerment leaders that changes the
Mhm.
community. And you learn about my mom, how she will have a lot of people over for Shabbat. I want you to share like what stood out to you, like what really spoke to your heart, and like any questions for me, let me know. Like I'm happy this is the moment where you can pick my brain too.
Absolutely. I have so many things. In fact, I even broke it down into bullet points because I was like,
Oh,
I gotta make sure I don't miss anything. So let's see. I wanted to start off with, okay, this book is beautiful. You should go buy this book alone just by looking at it, okay? That's first off. Secondly, you know, what made this book so amazing for me is your podcast. You know, to anybody who's listening to this podcast, is thinking about getting the book, maybe has heard David's story, Yaakov's story through the media. Now you're learning about the podcast now. You got to do it at the same time because it was like, you know, you had mentioned you're in the process of putting together like an audiobook, but being able to hear your story, you know, actually hear from, you know, Madre Maite, getting to hear Big Issa's story on the podcast, it was kind of like a weird, like new kind of audio book for me because you weren't speaking about the book necessarily, but you shared a lot of correlations, a lot of stories from the book, and getting to not only learn your story, but hear your voice, hear your family's voices in the podcast. Oh, it was just, it was like, it's like popcorn and butter. It was like the perfect combo. So, really recommend that for anybody. We talked about movies. Yes, you got to turn this into a movie. I would love to help in any way. If you don't turn it into a movie, you got to at least turn it into a TV show. Your story is so visual, it's so vivid. Um, but you know, I think, you know, let's start with like some of the points and then I'll get into some examples. You know, this book for me, you go into the importance of mentors. You go into how important it is to have an open mind to look at views not just from a Jewish perspective, a Hispanic perspective, that people need to open up their minds and really learn from everybody, new activities, new people you meet, young or old. It is so important to listen and to really apply some of their advice because we all come from different backgrounds, and sometimes we get so comfortable doing things the same way over and over. And what I loved about your book is that every chapter, it's, you know, it's motivational, it's real, it's emotional. I mean, every chapter there's advice, there's a life lesson somebody could take and keep with them. And that's in one chapter. There's over 20 chapters. So you're giving people these amazing life lessons as they go on throughout the book. It's incredible. And I have to say, on this podcast, And I think even in the book, you talk about The Secret, right?
I
That
do.
book, you talk about the life lessons, you talk about, all the wisdom that you got from it. I have to say, like, for me, like, this book, it feels like, the second edition to The Secret. It feels like the companion book. It feels like your version of The Secret because, like, going through it, listening to it on the podcast, I'm going, you are giving now to a new generation of people life lessons, real stories, new perspectives. And I was just like, I don't think Yaakov has realized this. Like you wrote your version of The Secret in a way, and also Madre Maite, because it is so much her story as well. So, I didn't know if you ever had thought about it, but I really think you kind of made your version of it because that's how the way you described how it was for you as a kid to read The Secret. I was like, this is how it feels for me to read Shabbat in Chicago. It's like this is like my new version of it. Um, let's see what else. Okay, so some examples, right? Like you, you in the book, so we've covered the life lessons, the perspectives, but now getting into the examples of it. You talk about how in the book you were a child actor and you ended up taking that money with Madre Maite and bringing it back to Guatemala and building a home, I think, for your grandparents. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, for grandma. Yeah, for grandma.
Grandma. And like that really spoke to me. And I think it speaks to a lot of people because for a lot of people who live in the United States, we have family from all over. And, there's this real kind of connection of um, what does it mean to have family in the States, family back home? What is home? Do you have two homes? So one like that experience a lot of people have. And I think it's a beautiful story that there is an importance to any family anywhere. It's good to keep in contact with them or even give back to them because for so many of us, at least for me, I think I'm second generation, maybe third generation in the States. And there have been some real sacrifices from my ancestry to for me to be where I am today in this country. So to hear your story was so beautiful. It reminded me when I got to go back to Puerto Rico, our family has land there, and they're telling me, our kids, they don't want it. If you don't take this land, if your generation doesn't take it, it's going to go back to the government. And, your story reminded me of that because it, it's one of those things where it's like, that could be a tough choice. It's not only for me to think about, do I see myself having a life in Puerto Rico, having some type of connection there, like financially through real estate, but also, the history that's there and that could be lost. Um, And kind of on that topic, I recommend if you still haven't watched it, you got to see In the Heights, whether it's the musical or the movie, because it really explores this topic in so many beautiful ways. So I think, your topic of family there was amazing. I think your book as a whole, like it I mean, off the bat, people got to know you don't have to be Jewish or Hispanic to enjoy this book. For me, I will admit it made it 1,000 times better because I am proud of my history and I was so curious about my Jewish and my ancestry because that wasn't a part of me growing up. And I got a lot of that through, Yaakov's book. But people need to know that in this book, it is like The Secret. It's applicable to anybody. It's filled with so much personality, so much honesty. You know, it really it spans to anyone, young or old, from any wealth status of life, from any background, like your Shabbats and how they are open to everybody. This book is really open to everybody. And, just a really cool example is you talk about Sábado Gigante, and you talk about Don Francisco. Now, this was a person that I'd never heard of, maybe a little bit through the grapevine of the family. But like in this book, you don't just talk about life lessons. You don't just talk about um, these amazing experiences, Tu Madre had coming into the United States, really embracing Jewish culture. Like that's all just the cream of the crop. But like in your book itself, you go into history of so many things, martial arts, cultural icons, whether Jewish or Hispanic. I mean, you talk about just personal life stories that, um, you know, maybe aren't in a history book, but when somebody opens them up, like for me, your stories became so important for me because I had so many connections, like the story of Guatemala, giving back to your family there, to your grandma. For me, that connection of my family back home, it your book in a way is kind of cathartic because you personalize so much. Your cousin Issa kind of felt like my cousin Issa because the way you wrote about him, I knew his interests, his likes, his dislikes, what he would get angry about, what his goals were, what his struggles were. And that's just one person out of like I can't even count. You must talk about at least like 50 to 100 people by name and then drop anecdotes about them. And that's what was so incredible about the book is you take off, all these amazing things off the top. Your book kind of is like this anthology of all these people who really just impacted you. Some of them weren't mentors, some of them were friends, but you still learned something from them and gained something from them. And I think that is such like a hidden thing about your book is that for me it kind of taught me to to look at life from a new perspective and really my encounters with you, encounters with my girlfriend Riley, encounters with my friends or family, like think about what my interactions are like with them and how it's affected me because almost it's like there's stories and there's life lessons happening all around us and sometimes you kind of need to step back and think about how far you've come, where you're going, to really look at like I've really grown or maybe I'm not growing and I really need to open up my mind and try new things. Like I think your book it teaches so much to people, but I think it also it allows people to learn more about themselves through through so many different ways, right? Should I keep going? Should I stop? How are we doing? Like I could keep going, but I
Yeah.
just
No, you're doing good. I gotta be honest. I'm so happy you shared those things, how like the book is so similar to The Secret and how, I talk about mentorship, family, and even like history, right? With Gante being not only from Chile, but he's Jewish, and I mentioned in the book, like he was you could say I looked up to him because I wanted to be interviewing big people. And look what I'm doing. I'm interviewing. I'm losing my words. I'm interviewing my boy. You know what I'm saying? Like my friend. And now I get to do this with people that come on. And I think it's
Mhm.
beautiful because I use the podcast and the book to give a voice for Jews of color that are not represented in the media, whether it's on TV, movies. And I think our Latinos, we're scared to come out, to share that we are also Jewish. And so to hear your story, and that's why when I write the book, I put a little bit of like, okay, so I mentioned, let's say, Rabbi Fournier, right? Who's Michelle Obama's first cousin. I also quote him directly from the podcast. So you can go back and actually hear his whole story, when I had him on.
Mhm.
So it's like a nice connection. And I'm just so happy that they inspire you and it meant a lot because, like I said, you text me, you're like, hey, is Shabbat open for everyone? Like, does your mom? And I said, look, fam, my mom doesn't care if you only got one shoe on. It's like that song goes, left, right. Let me see you move, left, right. Like my mom doesn't care. She, as long as you want to have a plate to eat, if you want to have a an authentic conversation, my mom will open the door to you, and that's how she was. She invited for all groups of people, Muslims, Christians, doesn't matter, atheists, they were more than welcome to come in. Um, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So I'm so happy you share that, brother. The floor is yours. The floor is yours. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, it's too many things. Well, just to save it for this episode, I have to say, in this world that we live in that can be so polarized, in the United States, it's like you got the Democrats or the Republicans, it's either this or that, like, or it's nothing, right? In a world where sometimes people don't allow us to be open to everything, to take a little bit of everything and use it to have a new perspective, to have a new way of life, to have all these different things. A beautiful example, and may she rest in peace, your tia Marta, her story was phenomenal. And I think it's just such a beautiful point to talk about with, tu madre, because like both of them, right? And your madre specifically, Madre Maite, like she was opening up, right, the topic of the book, hundreds and hundreds of people flooding to your home to enjoy Shabbat. Not just that, bringing in communities, friends, family to stay there, to have a shelter, a safe haven, right? Your tia Martha also was doing something similar, and it seemed like more in like a church, right? In a church sense, not like a synagogue sense, like the sense of that, tia Martha, similar to your madre, they both were hosting, these events. People come get food, maybe learn a little bit more about faith, maybe not. Have a place to come eat, to talk to someone, have a real sense of community, and hearing about how even, through Mamita Naya, she was also having hosting events for people to come eat, to talk, to sit, to laugh together, just to experience life together in a way that it didn't matter where you come from, your beliefs, in a way where it's just open. It's like when people talk about, people are people, your neighbor is your family member. We should be welcoming of each other. It was just so beautiful to hear that in your book, because there's so many times in life where people or society sometimes doesn't allow us to have that. Sometimes it's too scary to meet somebody new and to invite them over for dinner. And the fact that, your family, different family members over generations have kept this tradition alive in a faith sense, or just in a sense of manners and politeness. It is just so beautiful, and I think for me, it's kind of the best way to tie everything up with my personal experience reading your book, because, like I said before, I never really connected to Judaism growing up. I grew up through Christianity. I ended up um, now in this later part of my life, I'm kind of open to many faiths versus just Christianity. And, you know, having that ancestry of Judaism, it was so hard to connect with. Being Hispanic was so easy for me to connect to my Puerto Rican side of the family and to embrace it because of the music, because of the food, because of the culture. It is just so identical to the way I want to live and share my life. But your book, Shabbat in Chicago, I think for me, it was the first time I was able to experience life through the Jewish perspective, but with that Hispanic point of view and that Hispanic culture embedded within it. I just talked about the food and how your family, different generations, different people, welcoming people to eat, to come together with that, topic of being Hispanic. That is something like my mom and I were joking about because when she was hearing your story, she was like, "Oh, that is such a Hispanic thing to have people over for dinner." But then tying in the Shabbat with it, for me, that's why I could really connect and identify with your book because, coming from a background of that type of hospitality, I was able to realize, like, you know what, there is another way I can connect to this part of my history, because I do embrace my Hispanic culture, but because of the lack of, in the media, in the lack of sharing inclusivity, I didn't. I thought sometimes I was the only, Hispanic, and Jewish person in the world, which is such a crazy thing, but that's just how it felt. And your book reminded me I'm not alone, and there's so much more I have to learn about myself, to learn about, this Jewish culture that I have. So, I want to thank you and thank your book and everybody who shared their story because, as you can see, it's I think forever changed me and how I will look at culture and how I will look at um, hospitality, self-motivation, all of that combined. So, thank you. As we'd say in Spanish, like your book is un, bendiga, bendición. It was really, it was something I never knew I needed, and I'm so grateful to have it with me today.
Oh man, thank you, fam. Thank you. Thank you. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. So look, guys, this is the Outlet to Reality, the holdest podcast in Vegas and Chicago every Tuesday. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Chit chit. Y'all know where to find me. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, the Outlet to Reality. My Snapchat's Take One Pass It, and my TikTok is at Yaakov28. And Zachary, where can my fans find you?
If you look me up, Zachary Fried, or if you look me up at arecibofilms on all platforms, I do some editing and producing in Vegas, some film TV stuff. Come check me out. And, again, Yaakov, thank you for having me on this platform.
Of course, of course.